The story takes place at a mental hospital located on a secluded island. This place houses 67 dangerous criminals suffering from severe schizophrenia. However, despite being guarded by fully armed wardens, a female patient has strangely disappeared. Ordinarily, this wouldn't be such a major incident, but this female patient is named Rachel Solando, and she was institutionalized here for treatment after murdering her own 3 children. To prevent the possibility of her escaping and committing more murders, the Federal Bureau of Investigation has sent U.S. Marshal Teddy Daniels, a man with extensive case-solving experience, to conduct the investigation. Accompanying him is Chuck All, a new partner from the Seattle branch. Although it's their first time meeting, there is an indescribable sense of familiarity between them. Initially, Teddy doesn't pay much attention to these things because the mental hospital they are about to arrive at is exceedingly strange. Not only are there hundreds of wardens stationed here, but the walls are also lined with high-voltage electric wires. Even the only entrance and exit is protected by 2 sturdy iron gates. As soon as they get out of the car, the warden demands to confiscate their personal firearms. Although Teddy explains that all federal agents on duty must always keep their guns with them, this request is immediately rejected by the warden. He declares that according to federal prison law, the warden has the highest administrative authority within the prison. In a helpless situation, Teddy and Chuck have no choice but to reluctantly hand over their guns. Right after the guns are handed over, the warden further instructs that only the male patient Ward A on the right and the female patient Ward B on the left are free to enter and exit for investigation at any time. As for the fortified military Ward C in the back, which holds the most dangerous mental patients in the entire institution, if they want to enter for investigation, they must be accompanied by the warden and must receive written consent from Dr. Colley. On the way to meet Dr. Colley, Teddy discovers that all the mental patients here are looking at him in unison. Some raise their hands to smile and greet him, some avoid his gaze in terror, and there's even a female patient who signals for Teddy to be quiet, as if warning him of impending danger. These small interactions seem to imply that there is some unspeakable secret on the island. Soon, the wardens lead Teddy and Chuck to Dr. Colley's office. Before asking about the missing female patient, Teddy notices a particularly strange hand-drawn painting on the wall. Before he can even ask, Dr. Colley takes the initiative to explain, saying that those drawings are all real psychiatric treatment diagrams from the past. Although Dr. Colley says that treatment now is mainly with medication and psychotherapy, Teddy is very skeptical of this, because this mental hospital has always given off an indescribably strange feeling. Just like the case of the female patient Rachel Solando suddenly disappearing this time, the windows of her room are clearly sealed with iron bars, and the only entrance and exit is monitored 24/7 by medical staff and shifts. Moreover, she wasn't even wearing shoes, let alone escaping. Even walking on the reef-like terrain of Shutter Island would be very difficult. Currently, all the evidence seems to suggest that Rachel did not escape at all, but Dr. Colley resolutely refuses to admit this speculation and averts his gaze, wanting to leave. Unexpectedly, at this moment, Teddy, with his sharp eyes, discovers a folded piece of paper under the floor behind the bed, with the words written inside. Who is patient 67? This immediately makes Dr. Colley tense. Witnessing this scene, Teddy, with his years of case-solving experience, feels that there is definitely something wrong with this note, but it's clear he can't get the truth from Dr. Colley. So he prepares to question the other staff in the mental hospital. Under Teddy's firm attitude, Dr. Colley finally agrees to hold an all-staff meeting after dinner. But before that, Teddy and the warden conduct a search of the reef area, the only place on the island that could offer a hiding spot. The strange thing is that all the wardens are either slacking off or lying listlessly on the ground, as if no one really cares about this search. Only the warden provides a relatively credible analysis. He says that to swim from here to the nearest mainland, one would have to swim at least 17,000 meters. Moreover, the seawater this season is bone-chillingly cold. Even if one could overcome all that, the violent waves would wash the person or body directly ashore. Teddy doesn't deny this, but if the female patient were hiding in the cave on the other side of the reef, it would be entirely possible. However, this is also denied by the warden. But Teddy still notices an anomaly. The lighthouse on the opposite side of the island is patrolled by armed wardens. The warden says that the lighthouse has long been abandoned. Now it's just a sewage treatment plant, and he had his men search inside, but found nothing. As they are talking, the warden uses the excuse of it getting dark to hastily end the search. But that lighthouse remains deeply ingrained in Teddy's mind. After all the staff finish dinner, Teddy and his partner Chuck begin questioning everyone. During the process, a young man who was on the night shift that day appears to avert his eyes. This helps Teddy, who is skilled in interrogation, to seize the opportunity. Just 1 minute like that is enough for a person to disappear without a trace. So Teddy follows the clue, asking what strange things the female patient did before she disappeared or if she met anyone else. At this point, a beautiful nurse says that on that night, the patient's attending physician, Dr. Sheehan, held a seminar to discuss the treatment plan in the patient's room. But when Teddy asks about the whereabouts of this Dr. Sheehan, he happens to be on vacation. An even more unfortunate result is that the phone lines, disrupted by the storm, have cut off all signals. With no other choice, they have to temporarily abandon the clue about the doctor. But it's undeniable that the disappearance of the female patient Rachel Solando is definitely inextricably linked to this Dr. Sheehan. Leaving the room, Dr. Cawley takes the initiative to invite both of them to his house for a drink to relax after a stressful day. Unexpectedly, this seemingly kind invitation is actually to serve a psychiatric experiment, and Teddy, completely unaware, just follows along. Inside the room that appears before them is an extremely luxuriously decorated space, creating a stark contrast with the entire gloomy mental hospital. According to Dr. Cawley, this room and Ward C, where the high-risk criminals are held, were built at the same time during World War II. At this moment, the classical music playing from the record player unconsciously awakens fragmented memories of the World War II era in Teddy. Along with the music, another important character appears, Dr. Naring, a German psychologist of the same rank as Dr. Cawley. Both are attending physicians at this mental hospital. The difference is that Dr. Naring advocates treating patients with pharmacological and biological methods, meaning that if a mental patient's condition does not improve with medication, they will perform surgery to remove the frontal lobe and its neural connections to the patient's brain. The purpose is to eliminate the patient's aggression and excessive thoughts, professionally termed a lobotomy. Dr. Cawley, on the other hand, advocates for psychoanalytic treatment, which is through role-playing to break down the defense mechanisms that the patient has established. Once a major flaw appears in the logic of the delusion, the patient will also realize the contradiction with reality and will naturally come to their senses. In their very first meeting, Dr. Naring asks Teddy many questions about psychological tests. He is astonished to find that Teddy has a very strong psychological defense mechanism, as if something is deliberately hidden deep within him. The successive dialogues also make Teddy completely lose his patience. He has traveled all this way to investigate a disappearance case, not to have a family chat. So Teddy directly requests to see the female patient's file and that of her attending physician. He intends to try to find new clues, but Dr. Naring refuses at all costs. The two begin to argue. Although Teddy says he will leave tomorrow, in his heart, he has already planned his next move. That night, he looks at the note left by the female patient, wondering who is number 67 really means. Unexpectedly, while thinking, he falls asleep. In his dream, he meets his deceased wife. The wife says that not only has the patient Rachel Solando never left, but her murderer, Andrew Leddies, is also being held in this mental hospital. There's a rather strange detail here. The woman was clearly burned to death by the murderer Leddies, but now she is completely soaked, as if hinting that there is another story behind her death. Teddy suddenly wakes up with a jolt from the nightmare. At this time, it is pouring rain outside, and the ferry cannot leave at all. Since he cannot leave the island, Teddy has a reason to stay and continue investigating the case, and Dr. Cawley, who seems very annoyed by this, has no choice but to arrange for 2 patients from Rachel's group for Teddy to question. This first one is not simple at all. He has a congenital sexual dysfunction, so he extremely hates women, even using a shard of glass to injure the nurse who was caring for his father, leaving her permanently disfigured. When Teddy asks for clues related to Rachel, his hatred for women is immediately triggered again, and he gradually loses control. But fortunately, Teddy knows that this person is very afraid of the sound of scratching objects, so he continuously scratches his pencil on his notebook. Teddy deliberately provokes the other person for another selfish reason. He wants to use this opportunity to ask if the man who murdered his wife, Andrew Leddies, is on this island. However, the young man, agitated upon hearing Leddies' name, is so frightened that he proactively asks the orderly to take him back to his room. The second patient to appear is a woman, unable to accept her husband's infidelity and domestic violence. In a fit of anger, she ended her husband's life with an axe. She is considered one of the relatively normal patients in the entire mental hospital. Therefore, when Teddy asks about the specific details of Rachel's disappearance, she averts her gaze and deliberately asks Chuck to get her a glass of water. Taking advantage of this opportunity, the woman quickly snatches Teddy's notebook, writes a few words on it, and quickly puts it back. Regarding this action, Teddy deliberately keeps it to himself. After Chuck returns, The woman finishes her water and places the glass on the table. At this moment, Teddy again asks her if she knows a patient named Andrew Letties. The female patient trembles all over and hastily leaves, seemingly terrified of this person named Andrew Letties. Now, the investigations into both the female patient and Letties have reached a dead end. With no other options, Teddy thinks of searching the cemetery behind the grounds. He says that about a year ago, he read in the newspaper that Letties had been sent to this mental hospital after setting a fire that killed his wife. Currently, apart from Ward C where the high-risk criminals are held, which he hasn't been to yet, only this cemetery remains uninvestigated. Perhaps Letties was buried in a coffin long ago. On the way, Chuck asks about what the female patient wrote in the notebook earlier. After much hesitation, Teddy still takes out the notebook, on which the words "run fast" are clearly visible. Suddenly, the storm intensifies, and the two have to take shelter in a small house behind the cemetery. Once he has calmed down, Teddy recalls his experiences as a soldier in World War II. He had witnessed firsthand how terrible things humans could do to their own kind. Connecting this to the frequent strange disappearances at the mental hospital and the words "run" that the female patient wrote in the notebook, Teddy guesses that this mental hospital must be conducting some kind of horrific human experiment. Therefore, this time, at all costs, he must expose the conspiracy on the island and, moreover, rescue the traumatized patients. While they are talking, a strong gust of wind suddenly blows the wooden door open. A big storm is about to hit. The warden brings them both back to avoid injury, and besides, Dr. Colley is also looking for them. After a quick cleanup, Teddy's and Chuck's suits are soaked, so they have to change into orderlies' uniforms. A young black man thoughtfully brings them cigarettes. Afterwards, the two, neatly dressed, go to Dr. Colley's meeting room. It seems no one notices their arrival, because the hospital's leadership is discussing how to deal with the upcoming storm. If it rains all night, the most dangerous Ward C will surely be flooded. The 24 patients inside are all in leg shackles and could very well drown. But if these 24 people and the 42 from Wards A and B are put together, although it could prevent flooding, this would also certainly threaten the safety of the normal patients. Speaking of which, Teddy notices an anomaly. 24 plus 42 is equal to 66, but the hospital clearly has 67 patients. Connecting this to the note the female patient left earlier, who is number 67, this makes Teddy highly suspicious that patient number 67 is Andrew Letties, his enemy. Just as the truth is about to be revealed, Dr. Colley says that Rachel Solando has been found. Although Rachel has been found, for a woman who ran barefoot for several days on a deserted island, her feet have no injuries at all. Teddy suspects this person is an imposter found by the hospital, so he tries to probe to see if he can find any flaws. Unexpectedly, Rachel suddenly, for some reason, hugs Teddy tightly, even mistaking him for her deceased husband. And so, this interrogation ends with Rachel's crazed screams. Returning to his room, Dr. Colley says she was found by the lighthouse, but Teddy has no mind to care about such things now. For some reason, he suddenly has a splitting headache, as if the top of his head is about to explode. Witnessing this, Dr. Colley quickly brings some medicine for Teddy. At this point, Teddy already feels that there's something wrong with this medicine, but the headache is too unbearable, and he eventually swallows it. In a daze, Teddy is taken by Chuck to the central shelter. Amidst the rolling thunder, he once again falls asleep. The first scene in his dream, Teddy again meets his wife's murderer at Dr. Colley's house. But suddenly the scene changes, and the other person turns into his partner Chuck. Turning his head, he again sees Rachel Solando standing there with a blood-soaked body, and at her feet are the 3 children she murdered. Such a terrifying scene startles Teddy awake. At this moment, the others are still asleep, but a woman walks in through the door. She is Teddy's deceased wife. The wife says that Andrew Letties is here and he must continue to investigate. Then, Teddy wakes up once again. It turns out he was just having a dream within a dream. At this moment, Chuck arrives and says that after a night of storms, the mental hospital is in chaos, which is the perfect time to infiltrate Ward C. So, under the cover of their orderly uniforms, the two enter Ward C very smoothly, and even the wardens here don't notice anything unusual. But as soon as the two enter, before they've gone a few steps, a patient suddenly appears. Intuition tells Teddy that this person is Andrew Letties. So he quickly gives chase, but being unfamiliar with the complex Ward C, with just a slight carelessness, he is put in a chokehold by the other person. Then, this person asks some strange questions. When the person turns his head, Teddy seizes the opportunity. However, at this critical moment, the wardens arrive in time and say that this person is just a patient named Billy. Then, they and Chuck help the man to the infirmary. Taking this opportunity, Teddy can thoroughly explore this place. Perhaps he can find the real Andrew Letty's. Following the sound, Teddy arrives at a cell. However, inside is not Andrew Letty's, but his old comrade George Noyce. But George is clearly being held in another prison. He can't be here. When Teddy lights another match, George's face suddenly changes and he cries, saying that the doctors will perform brain surgery on him in the lighthouse. After saying that, he returns to sit in the corner. Until Teddy is about to leave, out of years of comradeship, George still reveals that Andrew Letty's is very likely hiding in the lighthouse. Just as the conversation between the two ends, Chuck also appears very timely. When they escape from Ward C and reach the woods, Chuck takes out a medical file for Andrew Letty's from his pocket, but there is no photo and no treatment record on it. The clue is clearly right in front of him, but Teddy doesn't want to look at this medical file, because at this point he has begun to doubt his partner's identity. After speaking, he just walks towards the lighthouse by himself, completely unaware that the weather is starting to turn gloomy again. Chuck follows, saying that the path to the lighthouse is too dangerous. Climbing down the cliff and going over there is tantamount to suicide. Moreover, now that they have the medical file of patient number 67, Andrew Letty's, there is no reason to continue risking their lives. These words make Teddy even more suspicious that there is something wrong with the partner before him. So he leaves Chuck behind and prepares to go to the lighthouse alone. However, when Teddy gets near the lighthouse, he finds that the sea level has risen, making it completely impassable. He can only turn back. Unexpectedly, Chuck has strangely disappeared, with only an unsmoked cigarette left at the scene. When Teddy gets closer to look, Chuck's body is being washed up onto the reef by the waves. Although it is very dangerous, Teddy still braves the danger to climb down the cliff to save his partner. As a result, when he reaches the bottom of the cliff, the body has vanished without a trace. Just as Teddy is in despair, he turns around and unexpectedly sees a flickering fire in the cave behind him. So he quickly climbs up. Initially, he thought Chuck would be inside, but what appears before him is the real Rachel Solando. It turns out she is not a mental patient, but a doctor here. The reason she fled is that she discovered Shutter Island was conducting horrific human experiments. The doctors would use a steel needle to pierce the brain through the eye socket, then remove the frontal lobe and its neural connections to the brain, turning people into obedient living corpses. Speaking of which, Rachel asks Teddy if, after coming to the island, he has taken any medicine given by the doctors or smoked cigarettes from the hospital. And these things, without exception, have surely had hallucinogens added to them, the purpose being to make Teddy gradually become a madman, then be imprisoned on the island for human experiments. Hearing this, Teddy knows he can't wait any longer. So he risks his life and dives into the sea. Relying on the strong will forged as a soldier, he tenaciously swims to the reef area near the lighthouse and immediately takes down the patrolling warden. Then, with extremely professional searching, he checks room by room until he reaches the top floor. And behind that door is the long-awaited truth. Teddy holds his breath and then kicks the door of the room open with his foot, pointing his gun at the long-waiting Dr. Cawley. Dr. Cawley seems to have been waiting here for a long time. Teddy quickly checks the whole room, fantasizing that he might find some advanced surgical equipment. However, he discovers that this is not a human experiment lab at all. The only thing advanced is probably the tape recorder on the table. Next is the wonderful moment of the whole movie's truth reveal. Dr. Cawley takes out the medical file of patient number 67, Andrew Letty's, and asks Teddy to read it aloud himself. Teddy reads Andrew Letty's medical file, but finds that it is identical to his own experiences. In disbelief, he thinks this medical file must be fake. Regarding these things, Dr. Cawley frankly tells the truth. After speaking, Dr. Cawley sighs heavily. He also hopes that Teddy can live in a fantasy world forever and never wake up. But unfortunately, Teddy is a well-trained soldier, not only very violent, but also frequently injuring the orderlies and wardens in the hospital. To this, Teddy vehemently denies it. Dr. Cawley has to say that currently, the warden and the members of the oversight committee have decided that unless this experiment can return Teddy to normal, a lobotomy will have to be performed to ensure he will never harm others again. At this moment, Teddy still doesn't want to believe all of it. At this time, his assistant, who is actually Chuck, pushes the door open and confesses that he is Teddy's attending physician, Dr. Sheehan. The purpose of pretending to be an assistant was to monitor his every move. When all the truth is laid bare before him, Teddy also begins to suspect that he himself is Andrew Letty's. But in the next second, the defense mechanism in his brain starts to work. He suddenly snatches the gun from the table and fires continuously at Dr. Cawley. Dr. Cawley, however, remains unharmed. Looking at the gun in his hand, it turns out to be just a toy gun. Teddy is thus caught between illusion and reality. At this time, Dr. Sheehan takes the opportunity to continue telling the truth about Teddy's wife's experience. Her name was Dolores Chanel. She suffered from severe depression and had suicidal tendencies. But Teddy, as her husband, not only did not care for his wife, but also drank all day and didn't come home at night. Therefore, that led to his wife burning down their city apartment, after which they moved to a small house by the lake in the suburbs. This also led to the tragedy. Just as Dr. Sheehan is about to speak of the most painful memory, Teddy's defense mechanism doesn't want to hear anymore. Dr. Colley sees this and quickly pushes Teddy away, delivering the final decisive blow. Dr. Colley's step-by-step pressure finally breaks down Teddy's defense mechanism. The self-blaming love he has for his children suddenly wells up, and his gaze changes from madness to extreme gentleness. As Teddy reaches out to touch his daughter's photo, the memories also return. A few years ago, on that day, he came home from work as usual. He opened the liquor cabinet to look for a drink. After calling his wife's name several times without a response, he went out to the lake and saw his wife, soaked, but his 3 children were nowhere to be seen. This immediately made Teddy feel that something was wrong. Teddy shot and killed his wife. Perhaps it was a momentary loss of emotional control. Perhaps it was to help his depressed wife find release. Until the moment he saw his wife fall bleeding, Teddy also completely sobered up. Now he should be called Andrew Letties. Andrew Letties, waking up this time, is truly clear-headed. Not only can he clearly state his identity and experiences, but he no longer avoids the fact that he murdered his wife. Hearing this, a concerned Dr. Colley sits down nearby. Although this experiment was successful 9 months ago, they also achieved such a success. But for some reason, Andrew Letties seemed to rewind the tape, once again sinking into delusion. However, fortunately, Dr. Colley and Dr. Sheehan never gave up on him. The next day, a recovered Andrew Letties sits on the steps. Dr. Sheehan comes over and offers him a cigarette. He takes it without hesitation. This shows that Andrew Letties knows this cigarette is not drugged. It seems that this role-playing treatment was truly successful. But right after, a single sentence shatters all previous efforts. When he hears Andrew Letties still calling him Chuck, Dr. Sheehan's heart goes completely cold. All the previous efforts have gone down the drain. So he shakes his head at Dr. Colley, and Dr. Colley can only signal for the staff to take Andrew Letties for surgery. Before leaving, Andrew Letties says a meaningful sentence to Dr. Sheehan. Hearing this, Dr. Sheehan suddenly realizes something. He hurriedly calls out, "Teddy," but the other man shows no reaction, just turns his back and walks straight ahead. At this moment, a grieving Dr. Colley watches as Andrew Letties is taken away for surgery, and Andrew Letties also looks back at him. But in his eyes, there is no longer the tension and anger from before, but instead, gratitude. Some say that Andrew Letties was actually a real detective, driven mad by Dr. Colley and Dr. Sheehan, so they could use him for human experiments. But in my opinion, Andrew Letties is the mental patient on the island. I will analyze a few simple details to prove it. From the very beginning, when arriving on the island, Andrew Letties' action of handing over the gun is very practiced, while Dr. Sheehan's is very clumsy, because this is his first time playing a U.S. Marshal. Then, in the part about investigating the disappearance of the female patient Rachel Solando, there are clearly 2 men's leather shoes there, the purpose being for Andrew Letties to realize on his own that this is not the truth, but he is immersed in the lie he himself has woven. Furthermore, later when questioning the patients, the second female patient clearly wrote the words in the top left corner of the notepad, but when Andrew Letties takes it out to look, the words have moved to the bottom right corner. It's clear that these words were written by Andrew Letties himself. He desires for this hospital to be a dark place so that he can escape the truth about killing his wife. However, the Andrew Letties at the end of the film is definitely completely sane. The reason he still accepts the brain surgery is because the memory of murdering his wife and indirectly causing the deaths of his 3 children is too cruel. Rather than living a sober life in pain, it is better to accept the surgery to become a living corpse with no memory. And that's where today's story ends. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed it, please give us a like and subscribe to the channel to support us. Goodbye and see you again.